I would like to call the Common Council Executive Committee of September 16th, 2025 to order. Love doing that. All right, staff, please call the roll.
President Vitiver.
Here.
Vice President Govindarajan. Here. Alder Ugair.
Here.
Alder Madison. Alder Matthews.
Here, I can put my camera on in a second.
Alder Lankella.
Here.
Oh, I'm not doing it right. Alder Tischler. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Here.
And I should say for the folks online, President Vitiver is here. Vice President Govindarajan is here. I wasn't repeating it. I should have. Alder Ugair is here. Alder Madison is absent. Alder Matthews is here. Alder Lankella is here. Alder Tischler is here. And Alder Figueroa Cole is here. You have quorum.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our August 5th meeting. May I have a motion on the minutes?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of approval? Seeing no objection, that motion is approved. Do we have any general public comment? Oh, I'm sorry.
That's me again.
I'm looking at you.
Number one, I'm sorry, I was, no general public comment.
Excellent. Any disclosures or recusals? Seeing none, we will move on to our first agenda item. So item 2, boards, commissions, and committees. And
Oh, and we do have one registrant on that item.
so are we taking public comment on that first, or are we doing the presentation first?
I think usually
We take public
Take
comment first?
comment,
Okay.
yeah.
So we're going to do public comment on item 2. Thank you.
we have a Travis Austin registering in support, wishing to speak.
All right. Yes, that works. Yep.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I just wanted to come and register and support. I've been liking the restructuring we've been doing of BCCs. I also just wanted to come and also suggest that as part of this restructuring, either in ordinance or in policy, we also have a requirement that BCCs meet at a minimum at least once a year. This was an issue with the ethics board where they met and did not have like a chair elected for like 2 years and stuff. And so as part of policy, I might suggest we also like have a minimum requirement of meeting at least once a year. That's all.
Thank you. All right, we have no other registrants, right? All right.
That is correct.
Okay, so we're going to go to, we do not have a motion on this. This is a discussion item, so I think I am turning it over to Deputy Mayor Baumel.
All right, thank you very much. I'm going to share just a couple of slides, and we'll see how this works. It worked, okay. Not sharing my screen, I wasn't sure how that would work. Well, I have just a couple of slides. Christy Baumel, Deputy Mayor, providing an update on a project that we haven't talked about as a body since March, I believe, but many of you will recall that over the last several years, the council office and mayor's office were leading an interdepartmental group to make some improvements to our BCC process. And just a quick background slide on that. I can't advance my slides. Let's see. There we go. Just one background slide on what this was, why we were doing it. To cut to the chase, we were trying to make sure we had effective and efficient operations, strong accountable committees, clarity for residents who were working and engaging in the legislative process, and accessible community-oriented engagement. And we really felt there's many ways and probably many improvements we could make to get at those goals, but we really thought one thing that was key to them was shrinking and reducing the size of our boards, committees, and commissions, our BCC system. And really that's because when it comes to effective and efficient operations. We wanted to really focus in on where alders are allocating their time, where staff are allocating their time, how many places we're referring legislation to, and just be as efficient as possible. This is certainly a call that we were hearing from the community during the referendum discussions a year ago. We want to make sure all of our committees are strong and accountable, meaning we need enough staff support to adequately and consistently support them all with onboarding, training, resources. That's difficult to do when we have a very large number. Clarity for residents was really, if you're tracking an issue, how many committees do you have to follow it through? How do you know which are the most important ones to show up at and say what you would like to say? Or if you're trying to just generally pay attention and there's a lot of committees, it's easier to miss something that you might care about. And then finally, we just wanted to recognize that while committees do provide a platform for engagement, it's a very rigid platform. It can be an intimidating platform. It is a speak into the microphone and say your piece platform, and it can feel intimidating, not accessible, time-consuming. We want to make sure that we don't accidentally default to that or create an opportunity cost of not having enough time to engage in other ways, particularly for alders in their districts because of the committee load that we've created. So these were all ways we were trying to look at the number of committees that we had and all of the reasons for it. We took action on this in March. We made several changes via ordinance. We combined some committees. We sunsetted a committee. We eliminated a few committees. I'm not going to go over that here today. There's a reason I'm here today, and that's because of what we also put forward in resolution. Resolution 87066, in addition to adopting an ordinance, the council passed a resolution directing staff to do a number of other things and report back by the end of August. I sent a memo to the entire council by the end of August, and also said I would come and talk about this here today. It directed us to take the steps to develop an ordinance to combine the Economic Development Committee and the Vending Oversight Committee. This was something that was a desire back when we were working on this in March, but the Vending Oversight Committee was busy getting all of their spring vending sites approved, and it was just a challenging time to be taking on a body of work to combine committees. So we extended a timeline on that. And we also had a number of items that we wanted to explore, but that involved outside partners, and we thought that the exploration would take a little longer. Those were potentially transferring the Joint Campus Area Committee to the University of Wisconsin, transferring the City, County, and Schools Liaison Committee to the school district, and perhaps combining multiple civil rights processes that happen in multiple committees into a single committee. So I want to give you a quick report back on those. And first, the first bullet here on the Economic Development and Vending Oversight merger, I am going to skip it and punt it because our Economic Development Director, Matt Mikolajewski, is sitting right behind me, and he's going to speak to that in more detail in just a moment. On the Joint Campus Area Committee, the question was, should this go to the University of Wisconsin? Should this be a committee that they run? And the logic was, one, it's very focused on university issues. Two, there's two jurisdictions that sit on it, the City of Madison and the Village of Sherwood Hills. Ultimately, this was discussed. It was discussed with the university. It was discussed with this committee, and a decision was made. They felt very strongly it should remain a city committee. And the major reason, the most to me pretty compelling reason, was that this committee was created as a city committee with an official role in making recommendations to the University Design Review Board for their development projects that happen within their master plan under their campus institutional zoning. And this city committee's role in that is the reason, is kind of chiefly why we at one point granted them this alternate design review path. So it would require rethinking all of that, and ultimately everybody felt like, this was working and that we should keep it going as is. We are proposing to make, so that answers the question that was in the resolution. That's our recommendation. In the process of these conversations, we did identify some small tweaks we could make to the ordinance, such as some tweaks to membership, some clarity around the scope. There's a geographic boundary that's laid out of where private development near the university is looked at, and there's some conversation about whether that boundary feels like the right boundary or should we adjust it a little bit. So we are working through those items, and I think you will see some proposed amendments come forward in an ordinance in the likely October to November timeframe that will just be small tweaks to implement those improvements. On the City County Schools Committee, the logic was similar. It was to propose that, so whereas with the joint campus, the proposal was, should this be a UW committee? With the City County Schools, it was, should this be a school district committee? It is focused on schools issues. It has, again, 2 jurisdictions serving on it, both city and county. And so we proposed exploring that. That proposal ended up prompting a larger conversation, which ultimately was, should this city continue, or should this committee continue, should this committee dissolve? This was a conversation they prompted amongst themselves. There were conversations with all of the 3 entities that sit on it, the city, the county, the school district. There were conversations amongst themselves, conversations with people who staff it. And ultimately, the committee sent a letter to elected officials of all 3 of those organizations in August, saying that their proposal is that they should dissolve unless they hear some compelling reason from one of those bodies and a body of work that they are requested to take on. So they asked for that by September 26th. That timeline isn't up, but I think, from the conversations that have happened, I think I'm sensing general support from those I've spoken to at the city for supporting that dissolution and recognizing that it has been very difficult for them to find a body of work that felt like it should rightfully be held and owned by that committee versus a flag that another committee would have to take on. And if that is the case, then we would be bringing forward an ordinance that would implement that as well. On combining awards committees, this is a work in progress. This is not something that we've reached a final answer on. The proposal was to recognize, we have an Alex Olson Stajo Award, Seeking Tolerance and Justice Over Hate. That is an award that's given out each year that city staff from civil rights nominate somebody for. There's the Martin Luther King Humanitarian Award that is has its own committee to nominate and award that recognition every year. It is a joint city-county committee, so there's a little more coordination there, and the recommendations are done in close coordination with the King Coalition. So there's a number of partners that they've been discussing this with. And then there's the Reverend James C. Wright Human Rights Award, which is awarded through the Equal Opportunity Commission. And there was a proposal that these could be put together, done with one body that took on all 3 of them, and it might create some economies and some efficiencies in terms of people that are just oriented to that body of work year-round. I'll just note, there's been some note and discussion, or I guess the question's been raised about whether it makes sense for the Jeffrey Clay Erlinger Award for Civility in Public Discourse to also be combined there. I think there's a number of different thoughts on that. I don't think there's a recommendation on that yet. But in terms of the other 3, it does seem like there's been some positive indications and support for it. They just want to make sure that they've had all of the conversations and look into it as far as it can. So Again, a work that's underway, and we would be bringing forward an ordinance to make those changes. And I think that is really all I wanted to share at the moment, but I'm happy to answer questions, or I'm happy to hand it over to Director Mikulaszewski to talk more about the economic development and vending oversight.
Alder Lankella. Hold on.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Christine. Good presentation. I just have a few questions in here, especially, most of these committees consider as the venue for public to participate. I think that's the only negative thing we'll hear back when we are trying to combine these. Especially, I've served on the Joint Campus Area Committee in the past. As you mentioned, it's mostly all campus area development work. Is there any consideration like the sewage district where when you say committees, city committees, is the staff, city staff is organizing that JCAC? Because it happens in the Warp building, which is in the university. But do your city staff go there to conduct that one?
That's right, that's correct. Ben Zellers from the City Planning Department is the main staffer of that, so.
So is that we actually still the sewage district have the university staff it, but have the city representation? Because there is a representative from Shorewood, there is a representative from City of Madison, Transportation Board, and there is a lot of other city involvement there already in the committee there.
In the Joint Campus Committee?
Yeah.
The city, it's a city committee, so it's in our Legistar system. We put out the public notices, we put out the agendas, we type the meeting minutes and staff the committee. So it is a city committee. They have, I think he works closely with university staff, and they do everything they can to kind of package their items as neatly as possible for him to put on the agendas, and I think they even support with venues, so I think there is a lot of resource sharing, but it is technically a city committee.
Yeah, so I'm just saying that pretty much they're doing most of the work. We're just trying to bring all of their work here, right? So we are doing the website and all. I'm just trying to see if we can actually, I think that's what you're trying to look at too, is can we hand over to university and we'll still have city representation in there?
We would absolutely, yes, we would have, in any circumstance, we would have absolutely had city representation on it and city membership on it. It was just a matter of who officially owns the committee, whose committee is it? And ultimately, the recommendation is to maintain it as it is, maintain it as a city committee.
Okay. Yeah, and on the awards committee, I think I'm just biased there. So if you have every award coming through the same board, there might be what do you call bias for the same people making the same kind of judgment on each award, right? So they might have the same view, same glasses to look at every award. So I'm actually in favor of keeping them separate based on each award there. So just my point there, not a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you, Christy. So can you elaborate a little bit about the work underway on regards to the training?
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I had that on the slide and I didn't mention it. So right now, there was a number of things that we said there was kind of a three-step process. One was to make the changes we made via ordinance in March, and then to also complete this body of work that we're talking about now. But all of this was to have more, accountable, efficient, effective committees. We mentioned a number of things related to that: onboarding and training, standardizing that for all members, more annual committee work planning for committees that are not referral-based, reviewing membership criteria. So there's a number of additional steps. On the training work that's taken place so far, this is led by HR and the city attorney's office to improve the onboarding and the training of the BCC staffers and enable them to kind of do a train the trainer and enable them to be better trainers of their chairs. I don't think that that's everything we would like to do. I think there's more that we can do that, but that's what's been happening so far. And that ultimately we would like to be doing that and more standardized and better training for all members. I have not been personally involved in that, so I can't speak to it in a lot of detail. I think my attorney Haas has been a little more involved, so he may be able to answer some questions that I can't.
I could. Is there a question?
Sure, I mean, I have all night. No, in all seriousness, like, okay, after, I don't know how many committees I have been on, I haven't kept count of it, but it's evident that there are committees that are held to certain standards because they're either connected to statutes like the ARC, for example, right? Like Plan Commission. And then we have committees like the Transportation Commission that is held to a bunch of policies that this council and prior council have put in place. And I would like us to, everything to what you said, sure, let's do that. But I feel like, especially now that we're going to have these every year election turnaround things, and the committee's placement is perhaps a shorter term, we should definitely prioritize when we place an alder in those committees, how to maybe introduce them at a higher speed under policies that committee manages. I'm going to put someone on the spot immediately because I can help myself. But for Plan Commission, for example, totally over my head committee. I not a committee that I would have chose to participate on. But once in it, Ledell, the chair at the time, she did a fabulous job guiding us through the process with multiple meetings and talking to us about the different laws and the different statutes and the community pressures and all that stuff. To me, I mean, I wouldn't be able to survive that committee without that kind of training. And I feel like there's some committees that we should really prioritize on that.
I appreciate that, Alder. I mean, and the council office has been involved in this project too. And most of our focus has been on improving how committees operate, not really the subject matter. I think that's a good point, and maybe that might be another phase of it. So far, what we've been working on is try to package. There was a large training for city committee staff and chairs back in 2019 or 2020. There's a video that existed of this big meeting across the street. It wasn't very user-friendly for somebody to watch it. So we're trying to repackage that training into more bite-sized video lessons on demand. And the approach we've settled on is first to try to do a thorough job of training the staff in the hopes that they will then be able to train their chairs, and the chairs will be able to help train the whole committee or body. And tweaking the resources if we need to. And also the idea is then to, hopefully once we get that phase done, to have more of an ongoing, regular gatherings of the city staff that staffs the BCCs, like we do with contract staff for different agencies, just to talk about common issues or procedures or Robert's rules or whatever that group wants to talk about. So it's just not a one-shot deal and then they're done, and to give them more support in that way. I think as far as the subject matter, I think that's a good point. Some committees are better than others onboarding their members and giving them better background. We have gathered some materials from some of those committees that we think do a really good job of that, including Planning Commission, to try to help others duplicate. So that is part of the conversation. We were originally scheduled to try to launch this after the April elections this year, so we're a little bit behind for a few different reasons, but we're trying to put together videos on shorter, more digestible videos on things like Robert's Rules, the legislative process, the ethics code, public records, those kind of background things that those staff should know. And also just tips on how to help manage those bodies, not only during meetings, but to prepare for meetings, setting agendas and things like that.
Thank you.
Okay, so are we handing the mic to Director McLajeski?
I believe we are. I will stop sharing.
Good evening, Alders. For those watching at home, I'm Matt McLajeski, the Economic Development Director for the city, and I'm going to briefly review some of the work that we've been completing relative to the merger of the Vending Oversight Committee and the Economic Development Committee. I think this should, yep, there we go. I will just zoom in a little bit here. I'm not going to read this memo, but I'm going to briefly highlight some of the direction that we're heading. We have presented this memo to both the Economic Development Committee and the Vending Oversight Committee, and they were generally receptive to what we are proposing. And we are here this evening to get the input of the CCEC relative to the merger of these two committees. And I'll just fast forward here. Our goal is based on the feedback that you provide this afternoon. We will work with the City Attorney's Office to draft a new ordinance combining the committees over the next 2 months. We will then likely be before the Common Council for approval of the merger ordinance in either a November, December timeframe. Then the new appointees to the new committee would be completed in January, February, with the goal of having the first committee meeting of the new committee on either February 18th or February 25th of next year. The proposed name for the new committee, and I'll try to center this a little bit, is the Business and Economic Resources Committee, or the BERC. To assist with the transition, we propose that some of the members of the existing EDC and the existing VOC be appointed to the new committee. And those members, as with all city committees, will be appointed by the mayor. We propose, so right now the EDC meets the third Wednesday of the month at 5 o'clock, and the VOC meets the last Wednesday of the month at 5 o'clock. We propose that the new committee will either meet on the third, fourth, or last Wednesday of every month at 5 o'clock, and we'll poll the likely new members of the committee to determine what the best meeting option would be. Following is a draft sort of outline of what we think this ordinance and this new committee could look like. We propose to have 11 members. That would include one designee by the mayor, one alderperson from downtown, 2 alderpersons from elsewhere throughout the city, and then 7 resident members with knowledge or experience related to business, real estate, workforce development. In addition, the committee would have up to 3 non-voting technical advisors that are individuals who currently hold an active street vending or sidewalk cafe license. And this is patterned off of the existing Vending Oversight Committee, where they have voting members that are non-vendors, and then they have technical advisors that can provide firsthand knowledge of what vendors and sidewalk cafe operators are seeing literally on the street. Those non-voting technical advisors would not count towards quorum, but they would be invited to participate in the conversation. The mayor would appoint all voting and non-voting members, subject to confirmation for the Common Council, with the exception of the mayor's designee that'll serve at the pleasure of the mayor. We propose that we have 3-year terms for members of this committee. As a new committee, we would stagger those. So a portion of the members would initially have a 1-year term, a portion would have a 2-year term, and a portion would have a 3-year term. And then once the first 3 years passes, everyone will be on a 3-year staggered term. And we propose, obviously, that the alderpersons would coincide with the end of the third Tuesday of every April per the new guidance on alderperson terms. The chair and the vice chair of the committee would be elected annually at the May meeting by the voting members of the committee. Now diving into some of the duties and responsibilities of the committee would be responsible for assisting city officials and staff in promoting a healthy economy, to assist city officials and staff in promoting economic investment, including small business development and neighborhood commercial district development. The committee would make recommendations to the mayor and common council on all street vending and sidewalk cafe related matters, as well as all business, real estate, economic development, workforce development, other matters assigned to the committee by ordinance. At least one member of the committee would be responsible for participating in the annual food cart review. Every 10 years, at least once every 10 years, the committee would be responsible for preparing an economic development plan. As I think you all are aware, currently the EDC is working on the latest incarnation of our economic development plan. And that plan will touch on our existing economy and existing programs, and then make recommendations to changes to or new programs, policies, and projects. The committee would act on everything that a committee is required as outlined in the vending ordinances. So these sections 913, 9135, 9136, these are all the sidewalk cafe and vending related ordinances. So the committee would provide jurisdiction there when the ordinance specifies that. The committee would serve as the body for hearings and proceedings related to street vending and sidewalk cafes. We haven't had one of these in a while, but under ordinance, the city is allowed to revoke street vending and sidewalk cafe licenses, and that's done via a hearing process where this new committee would be responsible for hosting. The committee would consider and provide recommendations regarding ordinance changes. They would serve as a venue for public input into street vending and sidewalk cafe regulations, and they would also, in general, be a forum for information sharing regarding the work of the Economic Development Division. The committee will meet once a month and will have the ability to, as all committees, create additional rules of procedure. In addition to the actual merging of the committee into a new Business and Economic Resources Committee, we're also proposing to look at the existing street vending and sidewalk cafe ordinances and to propose some changes, in particular to move some items that currently require committee approval over to administrative approval. A great example of that is right now we have specialized vending areas in the city, such as the State Street Mall Concourse, Southeast Campus, the State Street Night Vending. There's a map that the committee and the Common Council approves that outlines where that area of the city is, where those special vending regulations are applicable. Under the current ordinance, the Vending Oversight Committee is also responsible for approving the map that shows every individual unique vending space within that geographic area. And then every time amendments to that are made, the committee needs to approve that. What we're proposing is to change the ordinance such that this new committee would still be responsible for approving the geographic boundary of where that vending would occur, but that we authorize staff administratively to approve the individual locations of individual vendors. Obviously, there could be an appeal process to the committee if someone disagrees with staff. So in addition to the ordinance that's going to merge the EDC and the VOC, you as the council would likely be seeing similar ordinances in the months ahead that would move some stuff from a committee responsibility to administrative responsibility. So this evening, we have sort of two questions from a staff perspective. One, are you generally comfortable with our proposal to merge those two committees and the responsibilities of that new committee? And then secondly, are you comfortable with us taking a look at the ordinance and identifying ways that we can have perhaps administrative approvals rather than having the committee approve some items within the vending and sidewalk cafe ordinances? And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. And I just do want to give a shout out to those two committees. This is obviously a lot of work to put together this proposal. So just thank you to those committees for doing this wonderful work. Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. Matt, when it comes to the current committees for the Economic Resources Committee, I know, what is the name of the current committee? I'm sorry.
Economic Development Committee.
Economic Development Committee. I'm just going to give you an example. Let's say I'm a brand new business owner and I'm opening a restaurant on the west side of Madison. And I need to, I am on these stages of beginning to navigate getting a liquor license. How does this committee provide resources for me to navigate that, that process?
Sure. So the committee specifically does not provide those resources. Those resources are provided by our Office of Business Resources team. But what the committee does do is the committee provides guidance in terms of our policies and our programs. So for example, at the Economic Development Committee tomorrow evening, there's going to be a discussion around some of our building improvement grant guidelines, which that type of a business might take advantage of. So that committee, they're not usually a resource for businesses directly, but they serve as a form of support and guidance and a sounding board for our various programs and policies that we have for small businesses such as that.
And what office did you mention that will take care of them?
The Office of Business Resources.
And what will that office do when, specifically when a person, a person of color, a woman, someone that doesn't speak English, someone that will have a higher level of needs to get through city processes, what kind of services do they provide specifically for a liquor license?
Well, I mean, I'll be very honest. So liquor licenses are regulated through the city clerk's office. So it is usually the city clerk's office that'll work directly with those applicants on an alcohol license application. Our office definitely gets inquiries about how to get a liquor license, and then we will connect those entrepreneurs with the city clerk's office. But our office typically doesn't work one-on-one with the applicants because there's so many requirements for alcohol licensing, and they're run through the city clerk's office. So usually we direct individuals to the correct person in the city clerk's office to move forward in that regard.
Do you see any room to have a collaboration between the two agencies to facilitate a better process? For example, when we offer, put up the RFPs for affordable housing and any RFP that CDD puts out there, there's always a training that they put together about the RFP, and they cover all the city rules and things like that. So it's not a continuous work, it's just like one every so often training that happens. Do you see any collaboration between the two agencies to put something like that together?
Yes, it's something we can certainly have a conversation with the new city clerk and see what opportunity exists there. I mean, I will say, though, that there are some of those same businesses that are receiving liquor licenses do receive financial support from the Office of Business Resources, whether it be a building improvement grant or a facade grant. So there are certainly many cases where we are collaborating with businesses receiving alcohol licenses, but we don't work directly on the alcohol licensing itself.
Thank you.
Yep.
Alder Lankella.
Thank you, Director Mikolajewski. Thank you very much. This is a lot of work trying to look at all of the data between the two. I just have a few questions on them. Between the EDC and the vendor, how frequently they used to had their committee meetings?
The EDC always has a meeting scheduled every month. Usually through the course of the year, I would say they meet 10 times. Usually there's 1 or 2 meetings where either they can't get quorum or there's just nothing really of importance to meet that particular month, and then the decision will be made with the chair to cancel for that month. The Vending Oversight Committee, they have a monthly meeting scheduled. I would say that they probably meet closer to 8 times a year, a large part because the vending work is very cyclical, so there's times a year leading up, especially leading up to a new vending season, where there's a need to call the committee together. But then there are other times a year where there's just less work for them that they need to work on.
Yeah, it's just making sure if now with the new committee, if you're going once a month, is that time frame wise for, let's say, an example, vending company, they're trying to apply, is it kind of too long for them? If it's the same timeline, that should be okay.
Yep.
About the second question is how long usually these meetings used to take, the number of items for each one of them?
Yes, so the Economic Development Committee, typically they don't go much past 7 o'clock. Usually when they get to 2 hours, they sort of make the decision to refer other items that aren't critical to a future meeting.
Okay.
The Vending Oversight Committee, I'll be honest, it's been a long time since I've been to a Vending Oversight Committee. I think a lot depends on the item before them. There are sometimes items that are controversial from a license holder perspective, and those meetings will certainly go very long. There are other meetings, I think, that they wrap up in less than an hour because there's just more routine items that are less controversial.
Yeah, the reason why, you can understand why I'm asking that question, right? So and now you're trying to combine those two, how long those meetings could last, and are we going to make more calls without making more due process? Because if it becomes longer, it's like most of the meetings, right? So.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Economic Development Committee items aren't necessarily time sensitive. I mean, certainly the EDC gets referrals from the council and those are time sensitive, but some of the work of the Economic Development Committee, what we currently do is we kind of take a look at, as we're working with the chair to plan, okay, you know, here's what's been referred, here's what we should really talk about, here are some other things. Do you want to talk about those this month or should we punt those to next month? So I think we can do a similar process where we can take a look at, you know, what are the urgent items that are either referred or they're a vending deadline where we have to do it this month, and then those items that are less urgent, we can either decide to just, you know, have a longer meeting or punt those to a future meeting.
Yeah, so as long as you have some kind of prioritization process built into that one, I think that that will help to combine those two. Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Alder Govindarajan.
Thank you. And thank you for the both of you for this great presentation and your work on this. I have a really difficult question. How do you define downtown Alder?
To be determined. We'll have to lean on the city attorney's office as they're crafting the ordinance to work with us on that definition. But I mean, I think, the goal of having a downtown Alder is that a large number of street vendors and sidewalk cafes are located in the downtown. And so we want to make sure that we have some representation. And also it's, you know, also good just more broadly speaking from an economic development perspective, just given that the downtown has sort of unique needs that aren't necessarily shared elsewhere in the community. So we haven't talked exactly how we're going to define that, but I think the intent is that it be one of the core downtown districts.
We'll try not to gerrymander it.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about it. No, thank you. I guess for maybe a recommendation I would make is from the campus district, I do often hear the issues that they reach out to me is like housing and transportation, obviously, but every so often, one of the minor issues that they reach out to me is the food carts and the vending related stuff. So maybe if we can get some consistency in attendance, I would be interested in exploring the option of getting a student on this committee. So maybe we can discuss that a little bit outside of this meeting, but that's all. Thank you.
Alder Lankella.
Yeah, just on the same topic, the members, so you probably looked at the current members from the both committees to see where the both blend in, right? So that we cover the main purpose why when we had both those two committees, we don't lose that, those members.
Yes, and I actually think that there's actually an opportunity to strengthen under this new committee. The Vending Oversight Committee has always been a little unique in that all of the individual, like, to avoid a conflict of interest, anyone that actually had a vending license or sidewalk cafe license was unable to serve on the committee that governed what they do. So I think we'll actually have an opportunity to sort of strengthen through this new committee where we kind of get rid of that awkwardness and we identify a breadth of individuals that have some business-related experience that, you know, can help really serve the needs of the vendors. And of course, there'll still be the technical advisors that they can provide input. But I think we're actually going to end up with probably a better, more robust committee that can provide input on vending-related items in the end.
No, that's good. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Mikolajewski, are you looking for a motion from this body on this item? No. Okay, thank you. So this was just discussion.
Just discussion, and if anyone has ideas that you think of, you know, tomorrow or the day after, feel free to let us know, and we're happy to think through them.
Wonderful. All right. Well, thank you to both of our presenters this evening, and we will then move on to item number 3, Legistar 89344, accepting the 2025 Agency Annual Surveillance Technology Reports for the 2024 calendar year. We have a motion on this item. Second? Thank you. And any questions for staff? Any discussion? Seeing none, is there any objection to... Sorry? Oh, was there public comment? I'm sorry, thank you. Thank you. I think she told me there wasn't before, and that's fine.
This item, no.
Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, it has been moved and seconded. Is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of accepting this report? Seeing none, that report is accepted. We will move on to item number 4, Legistar 88463, creating section 2.035 of the Madison General Ordinances relating to requiring elector signatures with application to fill vacancy on the Common Council. However, I believe that title is now a misnomer with the substitute that has been provided. Is it a substitute or alternate? Substitute, thank you. Do we have public speaker, or members of the public registered to speak on this item?
We have one registrant, registered in support, available to answer questions, Travis Austin,
But not wishing to speak.
but not wishing to speak.
Okay, fantastic. Are there any questions for this registrant? All right, seeing none, I'd like to give the floor to my colleague Alder Govindarajan to discuss this item and the substitute.
Thank you. Also, motion to adopt substitute, I believe, if that's the right time for that.
Thank you.
Of course.
But then we need a second. Is there a second? We got a second? Okay, Alderman Keller, thank you. So, move to discussion. Thank you.
Yes. This has been gone through a little, our ordinance has gone through a little bit. So thank you for dealing with it as it's gotten referred a couple times now. So my original goal with wanting to introduce the original version was to make the alder vacancy appointment process a little bit more engaging, so constituents and residents can engage with the process. And I wasn't really sure how to do that in the most effective manner, so I starting with the basics, which was make them get 20 to 40 signatures, which is what all of us have done to get on the ballot in the first place. So I thought that was pretty reasonable. However, with the additional workload that would place on the clerk's office and the upcoming restructuring happening over there, I just didn't want to place more. I didn't want to throw a wrench in a consistently evolving situation. So after a lot of discussion, what is in front of you now, the substitute, is changing the existing ordinances to fill the alder vacancy. So what this version does is basically give the council executive committee a little bit more agenda setting in how we go through the alder vacancy process. So routinely, the executive committee will meet and we can decide however often that is. Any member can just be like, you know what, I think we should add something, we should remove something. And we can discuss, okay, how are we going to do the appointment process? It can stay exactly what it is in the ordinance, or it can change later on. Currently, how it works is a lot of discretion is given to the president. So in the past, that has meant that There will be Q&A during the council executive committee when we are interviewing candidates. Sometimes that means no Q&A. Sometimes the president decides what's going to be on the kind of questionnaire that all of the candidates or applicants, I suppose, will fill out. And this just makes that process a little bit more consistent. The biggest discretion at the time would be the timeline for how long the application would be open, when it's due, when things are publicized, and if they are even publicized in terms of putting the application materials on the website, whether they're not on the website, things like that. My goal is, as we are becoming a bigger city, and we might run into vacancies, we might not, we should have a consistent process. So by having this consistent process set out in ordinance, it gives the council executive committee a little bit more of the push say-so, but also it gives applicants an idea of exactly what to expect if they are running to fill a vacancy. It gives staff in the Common Council office more of an idea of how to set up the process and what the timeline might be, and what they might need to do. And then also, obviously, us as alders, we know exactly what to expect from the process as well. So that's basically the substitute in front of you. I hope I answered most of the questions you might have, but if not, I am open for questions. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, discussion on this item? Alder Matthews.
I have a couple questions. So, for the process described in 3, I think, for the timing, if that's something that's kind of moved more to the executive committee, and maybe I'm just misunderstanding this, so my apologies, but is the way this is stated, the full committee would have to meet post-reviewing the applications to decide who to interview, and then would have to meet again to do the interview?
So I guess I should explain how it most recently worked. Most recently, how it worked is applicants would fill out an application. The council president and the Common Council chief of staff would send that out to the executive committee members, and then we would interview, hypothetically, or hear their opening statements, whatever the process was, in front of the CCEC. So that would still continue with this way, except we're not. What was it you said? Like we would review the applications ahead of time? So we would review the applications ahead of time, but the actual decision is still made by the executive committee with the applicants in front of us.
Okay, yeah, my question was, and it seems like this is maybe the part that isn't changing, but does CCEC have to meet to decide who to bring in for interviews after reviewing?
No, as long as they're eligible based on they fill out an application, they will be interviewed.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
And then I guess my other question, I have 2 other questions. So I was wondering what the motivation was to include public social media handles, and if that's something that would be a requirement, or like some of the endorsement processes where you could put one, but if you don't, it's not like a problem.
Yeah, I mean, so when I specifically wanted to include the word public because I imagined that would be like people who have previously run for alder and might have a campaign social media account, or a LinkedIn, which doesn't make sense if you privatize that, But if you have a private Facebook or friends only Instagram or something like that, I wouldn't consider that public. That's what would be included in that. Whether it's required, it would be part of the application, and there's an expectation that they submit it. But again, if you have like a private account, don't put that on there. That's not public.
Okay. And then my last question, I think, is about the removal of the alternative procedure. I am somewhat familiar with that procedure because that is how one of the previous District 12 alders was chosen after the normal process went through. And it does seem like this was pretty important to have due to the timing of it. I think the alder that was serving stepped down during like Thanksgiving weekend. And then obviously that's not a lot of time before signatures are starting to be collected. And thus, I think at least 2 of the people who applied in the normal process were planning to run.
So, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, just there wasn't really much time after that until, I mean, I guess they still could have run a second round, but.
Yes, no, that makes complete sense. So from my understanding, and I had some communication with Attorney Haas on this, subsection 7 is kind of redundant because I believe it's subsection 5 that already provides the venue for filling that vacancy if during the same time period. So what subsection 7 says is if there's basically a vacancy during regular campaigning time, when you have already submitted signatures and campaigning are happening, so like January 3rd until election day in April, the president shall seek 1 or 2 former alders or former county supervisors to fill the role instead, and then the executive committee will review the applications and submit it to council, who can then choose to approve it or not. However, subsection 5 also has, which I believe was added later by a former alder, Wahilier, but if what subsection 5 says is if a vacancy also occurs after November 15th, which would mean campaigning time, the candidate shall serve until the next alder is elected at a special election in the spring election, which would also be the special election would occur during the regular election, which would be the primary in February and then the general in April. So it's kind of really redundant. Attorney Haas, if I didn't explain that properly, feel free to step in.
Well, if subsection 7 is removed, then we look at subsection 5 for what the timing of the vacancy is and how long that appointee would serve. Obviously, subsection 7 also involves this process of soliciting former alders and county board supervisors, which would be removed under the substitute. I think they, that may have always turned out to work in the past, but there's no guarantee you're going to have a former alder or county board supervisor interested or willing, or maybe that the council wants to appoint. And so obviously removing that would open up the pool of applicants. I've remarked this to Alder Govindarajan and others, that, the requirement that they commit to not filing papers to run, this is not a legal opinion, but it's just my personal observation. I'm not sure what the logic is of for having a preference for people who do not intend to or don't want to serve long-term. In other jobs, you want people who express a longer-term commitment, but that's just, it's not a legal question, but it would remove all of those requirements.
Yeah, I can at least speak to my understanding, since I was one of the applicants the last time, is at least that CCEC felt that it was too much power to give someone like a leg up of being an incumbent in that way, which is just how that council felt. But does, it made sense to me at the time. And so, yeah, I guess if you ran a full process, you could still, a past alder could still. But I guess, does this one, or does the wording here, do they have to have been a resident of the district?
So,
No, they do, yeah. Sorry, never mind.
right, it have to be residents of the district. In fact, residents of the district, I think, 21 days before the appointment, which is equivalent to 21 days before taking office after you're elected.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe the eligibility is still the same as any alder. But I guess the reason I ended up removing, part of the reason I ended up removing subsection 7 was it felt restrictive and redundant to me. Restrictive in redundancy, which I already explained, I think, and then restrictive in the way that you are being limited to a former alder or supervisor. And I also wanted to allow the flexibility of, let's say hypothetically I am resigning on January 5th, which is after the papers and everything are due. But there was only one other person running for my seat. So that could actually give CCEC the ability to come together and discuss this. There's only one candidate for the seat anyway. We could appoint them, or we can just appoint someone completely different. And I think that flexibility is good. Whereas if there were 2 or more candidates and it's unknown who's going to win on January 5th, I believe CCEC would decide to solicit other people who are not running for that office. I think majority of the alders that I have interacted with don't want to give someone a leg up. And if they were to do so, I think the public would kind of be angry about it. So I have maybe optimistic faith that the executive committee would not give someone a leg up by making them an incumbent. So I felt comfortable enough to remove that and then stick with just one process, which is a little bit more consistent, I think.
No, that makes sense. And I guess in the situation where that the stepping down does happen, where you could only do this alternate process, that does make it kind of restrictive. I guess it was interesting, or right, the situation with District 12 was that they did do a full process, and so they'd already collected applications, reviewed them, and didn't find any that were, deemed to be, that they wanted to appoint. So I guess in that way, it was nice to have this, to not have to redo a full round of applications, but I guess that's kind of a unique situation.
Correct. I don't remember exactly which subsection it's in here, but I do believe the council could just not fill the vacancy if there was a limited amount of time period. Is that right, Attorney Haas?
Well, the statute allows the council to leave it vacant, but under this, this like really restricts that flexibility and requires that there be an appointment process.
Got it. Well, that's new information for me. But hypothetically, if someone was to resign 30 days before the election, I don't, by the time CCEC meets and then council approves,
okay.
I think,
There's a practical aspect. to
Yeah.
it. I mean, it could happen a week before, when it's just not possible.
Okay, that makes sense.
All right, we're going to go to Alder Ugair and then Alder Harrington McKinney. Alder Ugair?
Thank you, Chair. Let's just start with subsection 1. The original text here is fairly straightforward. The council president oversees the process. It's hard to misinterpret that. With the revised text, we're substituting a concept where there's going to be a routine review by the executive committee, routine undefined, and now we've removed the clarity, it seems. That's why this is a question as to who is going to oversee the process. What are we trying to do with that text change in item 1?
Sorry, I turned my microphone off.
Sub 1?
Yes, if it's okay for me to speak. My goal with that was to push more of the discretion onto the executive committee rather than the president. And the overall changes to the entire ordinance, rather than just subsection 1, is to create a consistent process that hopefully does not have to be changed every session or every time there's a vacancy. So that's why I left routinely undefined, is because ideally, if there's a good enough process, you don't have to go back to it every session or every year. It's just as needed, basically, is how I would view routinely.
Okay. And I'm just going to, the question already came up, but just to comment on the inclusion of public social media handles. However, one tries to define public, which what's on my mind, coincidentally, was an extensive section on NPR Morning Edition today about the way that social media is being used to create problematic situations with First Amendment freedoms. A variety of people have lost their job over postings on various interpretations of what a public statement is, about whether something that might be in public social media 10 years ago or 5 years ago also might inform what their position remains to be today and how that's used. I'm just going to say that I'm somewhat uncomfortable with the idea of including social media in this. Next is a question, I think it's probably for Attorney Haas. With regard to the inclusion of particular timelines in sub 3, I certainly understand the motivation, but my question is, since we don't seem to have, that I'm aware of, to had a problem with timing in the past, and I might be wrong about that, but were, due to staff conditions or other unforeseen circumstances, if the timeline set forth here was not accomplished, would that in any way disqualify the person or provide a reason for redoing a process or otherwise complicating a decision that would then be presented to the Common Council on a recommendation?
It wouldn't affect the appointment because the council ultimately makes the appointment decision, and it would essentially be ratifying whatever the process was that was used.
Okay.
It does raise a good point. We talked about timing earlier, and this process, the way it's set up here, does require a certain amount of time. It's got to be posted for at least 10 days. Obviously, CCC has to meet, and then it has to go to the council. So it may not be possible to make an appointment under this timeline. I think then CCC would need to decide if it wants to get together and revise the process for that particular appointment, which would be permitted under this ordinance to shorten the time frame.
Thank you. And just a last comment on the elimination of sub 7. I think I understand the discussion so far on what the impact is on taking it by. I was totally comfortable with leaving it in for this very unique and specialized circumstance where we may need to have that set out. But no further questions or comments. Thank you, Chair.
Are you complete, Alder Uyer? Okay. Then we are moving on to Alder Harrington McKinney and then Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I am originally I was concerned when it had the requirement of the 20 signatures, and I see that the substitute does not have that, and I'm still not sure if I'm connecting the need for the ordinance in terms of clarity and a process. Have we achieved that? And much of the conversation leaves me to wonder, have we achieved the intent and why this is before us at this point? And so I'm going to hold my questions because I did not get a chance to go through thoroughly the substitute, but it leaves the question for me is that are we fixing what is proposed? I mean, what's broken? How are we making it better? And is the substitute going to achieve that level of clarity? And for some reason, I'm not getting there. And perhaps with further discussion with the maker, I'll get there. But at this point, I don't see the connection in terms of clarity and making and having the ordinance be process more equitable, more inclusive, and flow better. So I'm going to end because I'm really I'm not really there in terms of the why, and is the process better with this ordinance, or does it complicate it more? So I'll stop there.
Alder Govindarajan, did you want to respond to that or hold? Okay. All right, Alder Figueroa Cole.
Thank you. I also a little bit trying to understand what are we trying to fix. I mean, when I think of a vacancy, I'm thinking about a short-term assignment, not something that, it may become a long-term. We've seen that happening, but for the most part, the purpose of the vacancy filling is to fill a hole at that moment, to fill a short-term need. So, just starting from the very top, I mean, most of the questions that I had, specifically around 7, were already asked, and some of the other things were already asked, so I'm not going to repeat them, but I'm concerned about them. But the additional step here of even with this limited time and with the limited resources that we have in the council office to require to have a meeting at the Alder district, I'm also don't understand. I understand that may. It's the intent of having more community engagement, but that's also work that we are putting other people to accomplish, especially in such a short time window. So when I read these changes, Mike Haas was in my head yelling at me saying, this is an ordinance, Alder, not a standard operating procedure. So it almost felt more like a process that we could handle outside the ordinance and implement it just that is our job as the executive committee to have the ordinances that are pretty broad, pretty high level, and then the committee should be establishing standard operating procedures or work instructions to enable that ordinance to work. And also allows for each CCEC to have the freedom to change them without having to go through the entire process of changing the ordinance every time that there's a hiccup on the process. So I have to admit, I got this earlier this afternoon. I read through it. My mind wasn't really set up to ask the questions that Alder Matthews asked, so thank you for doing that, and Ugair, and Alder Ugair's questions, and Barbara McKinney. So those things were popping up when I was reading this, so I don't know, I'm not seeing I see the intent, but I think those can be managed outside of an ordinance, not be so detailed within the ordinance. So that's all I got.
Alder Govindarajan, did you want to respond to that or? Okay.
Thank you, President Vittever. Quick clarification, and I think I have screwed this up, or something happened. The clause that says that a meeting should happen in the aldermanic district that the vacancy has occurred was an old draft that Karen and I had decided to take out. So that should not be here. So I don't know the best process for removing that, whether we should amend that out or just refer this ordinance again to the next meeting and then deal with the cleaner version. But that is the most important thing I want to talk about. The one other thing I want to respond to was Alder Ugair earlier about the timeline. I know that this change does set the timeline in place and creates a timeline, not necessarily create a timeline, because I want to emphasize a timeline as had already existed. It had been decided by the president and the mainly the president, probably in consultation with the chief of staff. However, that timeline only gets publicized when a vacancy occurs. So my intention with providing clarity was if it is in the ordinance and it is a consistent timeline, then the alders, the staff, and the applicants can all have an idea of what to expect from this timeline, whether it's 10 days this or 10 days that, because in the past that has been different. It has been longer, it has been shorter, and my intention was to hopefully make it so you don't have a timeline of 30 days to fill a vacancy, but also not 5 days just so in a hypothetical scenario, if the president really wants an application from someone particular, they don't close it right after, which probably wouldn't happen. But all of that is like fixed by this, I suppose. That's all I really have to say. But I do apologize that this is the wrong version in front of you. I did not catch that. I had the right version in front of me because I have been using it on my computer.
Alder Matthews.
I also just had realized I wanted to ask about needing to have a meeting in the Alder district, so I'm good, but thank you.
All right, so I believe there is a motion on the table and a second. So the question to me that I have is, are there any motions to amend or re-refer, or are we voting on moving this forward as is? Go ahead, Alder Govindaraj.
I'm going to motion to re-refer to the 10/7 Executive Council meeting, followed by the Common Council meeting after that. Sorry, that's the special meeting. My bad. I'm going to re-refer to the 10/28 Common Council Executive meeting.
So 1028 CCEC.
Yes.
And 1028 Council.
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Thank you.
Fantastic. Great. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, is there any opposition to recording a unanimous vote in favor of re-referral? Seeing none, that item is re-referred. So, point of order. We have 10 minutes until we kind of have to clear for IT to be able to get us to council meeting. So we have a couple of options. One, we could start discussion on the next item, which of course I now have the wrong thing, item 5, or we could entertain a motion to re-refer it to 1028 CCEC and 1125 Council. So I'm looking for the will of the body of, would you like to start discussion now, or would you like to refer? And perhaps Alder Tischler might have.
Yeah, I'm fine with referring it.
Okay, so would you like to make a motion to,
I'd like to make a motion to the dates that you just
or
suggested.
to re-refer to the 1028 CCEC and the 1125 Council meeting? Is there a second? Fantastic. And is there any discussion on that re-referral? Seeing none, is there any objection to unanimous vote of that re-referral? Seeing none, that item is re-referred. And then I believe that we are moving on to item number 6, which is the council office update.
All right. I'm looking for my notes. I apologize. I sent, I guess in the interest of time, I did send the update out by email to all alders, including the CCEC members, and I'll attach that to Legistar tonight. Please pay special attention to the out of office, so that you can plan accordingly with your neighborhood meetings in particular. I do provide I have a reminder in there about our September 30th Common Council discussion, and I provide 3 tips, important tips for alders when they're writing their blog posts to start getting acclimated with the accessibility requirements that will be going into effect in April. I give 3 main areas that you can start your practice sooner rather than later, and if you would like more information, I'm happy to provide it or put you in touch with someone at IT that can also provide it. There will be more information, but I'm trying to roll it out to you as I receive it so that you have a bit of a head start on practicing some of these additional accessibility actions so that you can be comfortable by April. I think that was it for today. If anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for Karen? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the final item, future agenda items. Is there anything, I don't think we've gotten to take up anything on this list yet. Is there anything that wants to be, that anyone wants to add to this list? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Second? Anyone opposed? All right, we are adjourned, and council will resume council will begin at 6:30. Thank you.